Is Dune Spice Wars worth buying? Currently on sale on Steam for $23.99, it is Shiro Games' latest 4X RTS strategy game that come out to the market, similar to games such as Civilization or Stellaris, or Shiro's previous game, Northgard, and then it also has the RTS elements. But it is very different from those other titles, and I'm here to let you know my experience with the game in the almost 100 hours I already have since its early access release back in April. Welcome to the channel, I'm FitzBro, and we cover a variety of strategy games, including content for Dune Spice Wars. You can expect to see build order guides, strategy, media coverage for Dune as we move forward. So make sure you hit that sub button if you have not already, and let's start to unpack what I think really shines about Dune Spice Wars. The number one element that I've been enjoying about Dune has been the multiplayer. Now, you might have played multiplayer in some other strategy 4X games and thought it took way too long to complete a game. Like, what was the chance that someone was going to stick around to the end of a Civilization or Stellaris round? Very low, because it could take days to complete individual games, and that is not the case for Dune. I have found that I've been completing most of my games between 1.5 to 2 hours at 1.2 times speed, which is the speed I prefer to play for Dune Spice Wars, because you have to remember, this is a RTS, it is real time, it is moving, it is not a turn-based game, and as a RTS enjoyer, I found it to be really fun. There's plenty of stuff to do on a daily basis for each day on Arrakis, and the 1.2 times speed is just enough to finish a round in a single session. Now, if you're someone who doesn't like to play 2-hour gaming sessions, that's fine. Just like other titles, you can save a game and load it up later. So if you want to continue with friends or whatever it might be, that is an option as well. But the multiplayer really makes the diplomacy options of this game shine. You can chat with other players, make defensive pacts, attack, decide who's going to do what, see who's winning, gang up on them, maybe not, have a player hostage because you're ahead and you could knock them out, but instead you could use them for your advantage. Or maybe one of those alliances goes sour and you get backstabbed and assassinated. There's so many different things that can happen in multiplayer, and it is so much fun. Way more fun than Gandhi threatening you in Civilization. And talking about that, let's talk about the different victory conditions there are. There is a military conquest. You can take out all of the players' capitals, and that's one way to win. There is the diplomacy victory, where you are elected to the Dune governorship and hold that for a certain number of days. You can tech towards that by focusing on your influence and voting mechanics. Even your faction choice might help with that. There is an espionage victory condition where you can research some spy tactics and carry out an assassination on an enemy leader. It takes 3 attempts, and it does take a while to do. It's harder than you think. And then there's also the score victory, which is known as hegemony in this game, where if you reach a 30k score, that the game's over, that player wins. But that is very, very late, and that's what kind of prevents the game from being days upon days long. And they've already announced there's going to be a 5th win condition coming out soon, as well as a 5th faction. Let's talk about the 4 factions that we currently have. We have the Atreides, who are like the noble, they can do noble faction. They can have some votes on the council. They are able to peacefully annex villages and have a variety of infrastructure things they can do. You've got the Harkonnen, which are kind of the like brutal faction, very military heavy. They can oppress their people through doing using oppression abilities to buff output, but then there's some rebellions that they put up with and have really strong military units. And then you have the smugglers, which are kind of like, you would think of a smuggler. They're the shady. They can build underworld headquarters in enemy players' villages. They can do all kinds of sneaky tactics, use missions such as poison reserves to poison enemy supply lines. There's all kinds of things you can do with them. And then there's the Fremen. They're kind of the natives of Arrakis, and they can even get in the sandworm that is so iconic to the Dune franchise, and they can ride it. You can use a little sandworm teleporter subway to get across the map instead of the airports like other factions. So there's 4 different factions and many different ways you can play the game that suits your playstyle. And very soon, we're going to have a 5th faction. Who knows what it might be? I think the new wing edition could be something technology-based, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, we talked about free-for-all. That's my favorite way to play this game. It does not let you double up on factions. So you're going to have all 4 of those factions in a free-for-all game, 4 players. You can decide how big you want the map to be, some different conditions, but that's generally it. I recommend the 1.2 times speed. It is perfect. It's not too fast. times 1 speed would be maybe a little bit too slow. And you really don't need the fast forward option when you're in a multiplayer game because you aren't pausing when you're in those menus. It just keeps rolling. So you got to get somewhat quick on your feet. So I'd recommend start off with a little single player first, just to get some knowledge of the game first. If you don't like doing free-for-all, you can do 2 versus 2 with a friend. You can team up with a buddy, whether against 2 human opponents, or you could go up against the AI. You can do 2 versus 2 against, maybe you want to go against the brutal AI with a friend, or maybe a little bit easier. And maybe you even want to split up your session over a few different days and want to save and resume. It's going to be easier to do that with 1 other friend versus 4 people. And if multiplayer doesn't suit you, let's talk a little bit about the single player. Now, I am a person who usually skips straight past the single player for games, goes right to multiplayer. I don't really like single player in general. And I found the single player for Dune to be absolutely captivating. I was kind of forced to because there was no multiplayer on launch, and I'm glad I did because I learned the game, and it is super fun playing against the AI. It didn't feel like they were all ganging up on me or that was really unfair. I did play it from the normal difficulties to the hardest, and it is a real challenge, and I was able to get some victories on that brutal difficulty level, but it was really fun. So if you're someone who just likes to do single player, doesn't want to have the stresses of a multiplayer competitive environment, the single player for Dune has plenty of action for you. And my last point, has anyone else seen an early access for a game, or even the actual launch of a game that was void of bugs and balance issues and performance and crashing and all kinds of problems? There aren't many of those these days. And this game is in early access, and it feels like most games are 1 year after full launch with updates and all of that. Age of Empires 4 is still fixing things right now. It launched back in October and was not a complete game, and they're selling that for $60. You can pick this thing up for $23.99, and I'm telling you, it is a polished product. They are patching it on the daily, releasing new content, new factions, all kinds of new stuff. Their roadmap includes exciting elements, and I'm just super optimistic about Shiro Games and have been very impressed. This is my first experience with one of these titles. I did not play Northgard personally, and I've been really impressed with the dev team, and I think this game is in great hands. So if that's a concern of yours, if you're sick of buying games and spending money for game companies for unfinished products, that is not going to be the case for Dune Spice Wars. And guess what? This is early access. It is only going to get better. Monthly patches, and right now they've been hotfixing even between that very commonly. So there aren't just like terrible game-breaking bugs that live for long periods of time. So I would say absolutely worth your money. Buy this game. You will not regret it. Now, let me know down in the comments below if this video helped convince you to pick up the title, or if you have anything else, if you have any questions about the game, I'd be happy to help you out. And you can also find some help in my Discord. There's a link down in the description. I've got channels for each of the factions. So if you want to learn the smugglers, I've got a smuggler expert in there that's got plenty of tips. I've got a pinned message actually right now for them, and you can learn from them. And I'm also going to be creating more Dune strategy guides and tutorials over the coming months as I get my hands on the new content for this game. And overall, just wondering, what do you think about Dune Spice Wars? What games did you play before that maybe brought you to be interested in this one? For me, I've been playing a lot of Age of Empires recently. I used to play Stellaris and Civilization, and when I tried this and saw, oh, this is like a 4X game, but it's kind of the real-time elements I've enjoyed from playing Age of Empires. Now, it's nowhere the same amount of micro as far as like your units, right? It's smaller units that are more powerful, but there is plenty to do in this game and tons of replayability. I'm excited to see the different type of diplomacy options are going to be. It's super fun having the kind of like backstabbing that can happen. By the way, you can get nukes in this game with certain factions and nuke an entire army or base, but it doesn't just like wipe out their capital. They aren't out of the game, and it's very expensive, and you lose standing on the Landstrat Council. And there's so many facets of this game I could talk about, but that is not the purpose of this video. What stands out to me for this is the multiplayer, the fact that you can complete an entire game in a single session, and that there are many different ways to play this, whether it's 2v2 with a friend, free-for-all, or single player, and that it is an early access that is well polished, which you just don't find anymore these days. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments what you think, and make sure you hit that sub button. I am looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one.